Hey, Neil Rice here with Startup University, and in this video, I want to talk about corporate formalities and why they're so important to keep the limited liability protection that you start with when you form an LLC. Don't make the mistake of ignoring corporate formalities because that's critical to maintain your protection. We'll get into it in just a minute. If you don't know me, I'm Neil Rice. I'm a longtime business attorney. I've helped over 1,000 people start, build, buy, grow their business. I want to do the same for you here at Startup U. Now, let's get into this. As you know, if you watch my videos on LLCs, I typically suggest that when you start your business, you're going to want to form a limited liability company. And that creates a wall of protection between your personal life and your personal assets and your business activity. And so when you create an LLC, you're actually creating a box of protection around your business activity. And generally, if you set up your LLC correctly, and then if you take the steps that you need to take to maintain the limited liability protection, that means that as you go about your business, if there's anybody that you meet along the way or interact with along the way, and they feel like they've been harmed for some reason because of your business activity, they're going to be limited to the four walls, within the four walls of your LLC or business in order to satisfy their financial claim. And that means that they generally cannot reach outside of your LLC to your personal life and your personal assets. And that is called limited liability protection. It creates a nice thick wall of protection between your business activity and your personal life. Now, there are some things that you can do or neglect to do that can start to give this person who's been harmed an opportunity to break through this wall. Now, we don't want to allow that to happen. And so we have to very carefully consider what things do we need to do and what things do we need to avoid doing in order to maintain this important protection that we've created for our personal life and our family and our personal finances. One of the things that can happen is this person, or more likely their attorney, can argue that you have not respected the formality of the LLC. What they mean when they make this argument about corporate formalities is that when you have a company and you're operating a company properly, you have to acknowledge that that company, that LLC in this case, is separate from you personally. It's not just you going out into the world and doing business personally. And so if the LLC isn't you personally, then there has to be a modicum or a part or a piece of formality to all this that you're doing if you want to maintain the legal protection you've tried to create by starting the LLC. Now, it used to be that the main entity that people used to do business were corporations. In the 70s, LLCs started to pop up in different states. By the 90s, the LLCs were quite popular. And today, for most people, the LLC is going to be the entity of choice. One of the reasons that people like LLCs so much is that in most states, the statute and law that governs LLCs doesn't actually say a whole lot about corporate formalities. And that's different than the state's laws on corporations. If you go through the statutes and laws on corporations, typically there's a whole section about how corporations need to appoint officers and how they need to keep meeting minutes and how they need to document this and document that. LLC statutes in most states typically don't require that level of documentation, and people like that, as you should. It makes it simpler to operate the company and still honor the corporate formalities that are required, because the corporate formalities that are required in the statute are pretty minimal. Now, the one thing that I teach to make sure you're honoring the difference between that LLC and you personally is the use of LLC resolutions. And a resolution in this context is simply a written document that the owners and manager, if there's a manager of the LLC, will sign and acknowledge anytime the LLC makes a major decision or takes a major action. Well, what that means is, let's just say that your company has decided that it's going to buy a new property and operate at that property. For most small businesses, that's a pretty major decision. And so you might come up with a resolution that says, hey, we believe it's in the best interest of the company to go ahead and change locations. And we found this building that's perfectly suitable for our company. And so we've decided as the ownership group or the members or the manager of the LLC that this is in the best interest of the LLC. And you document that and everyone signs the bottom and you keep that in your important company records. So what I want you to do is anytime you make a major decision for your LLC, I want you to simply create one of those resolutions, describe what's happening, state that it's in the best interest of the company, and have yourself as the member or any other owners of the LLC sign that resolution. So using a resolution like this can go a long way in showing that you are honoring the corporate formalities of that LLC. By simply documenting in a slightly formal way the decisions, the major decisions that you're making for your LLC, if ever someone is trying to pierce your corporate veil, break through this limited liability protection by arguing you're not following corporate formalities, you could pull out your book of resolutions and say, oh no, we absolutely were. Every time that we made any major decision about the company, we in fact even went to the extent of acknowledging in writing that all of the owners of the company believed that this was in the best interest of the company. And if I were just, and you would argue that if I were just out there doing business personally by myself, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't have to take that step to honor the difference between you personally and your LLC. So corporate formalities, very important with LLCs, not all that hard to keep up with corporate formalities, and you should do that to fend off any kind of challenges to this liability protection that you're putting in place with your LLC. Like what you hear? If so, I'd love for you to check out my course, Startup University, where I help take you from timidity and uncertainty to confident, bold action with your new business. Hey, check out the link in the description below where you can sign up for a free consult with me. I'm happy to hear what your biggest questions or concerns might be for starting or buying your business. Let's talk it through together. And remember, there is life-changing power in a good business. You've got this. I'm right here with you. Let's go.